Welcome to the Savage Executive Podcast. This is wisdom for the weight that you carry. My name is Steve Smith, and whether you're running a company, leading a department, or building your first team, this is where faith-driven leaders come to sharpen. Let's dive into it today. You've got a big decision on your desk. A serious one. It could move your business or your team or your ministry forward. Could also create complications. Maybe it's a client that you're not sure about. Big money, but something feels off about them. Maybe it's an investment in capacity, expanding into a different market, a significant hire, a pricing change. A restructuring needs to happen, but keeps you up at night. So you sit down, you pull out all the data, you start asking the typical questions. What's the ROI? What's the payback period? What does my gut say? What's the competition doing? What's going to get me the best outcome this quarter? These are all legitimate questions. Seriously, they matter. But I want to introduce you to a different lens today. Not instead of those questions, but alongside of them, underneath of them. A lens that changes how you frame every major decision that you make. This is about making better decisions, smarter decisions, wiser decisions, by recognizing something that is actually true about your role as a leader and your resources. Because once you see this truth, you really can't unsee it. And fundamentally, it will change how you lead. The leaders who sleep at night, the businesses that last, the teams that stay loyal, they're operating from a different framework. And today we're going to unpack that. Let me start with a foundational truth that most leaders never really sit with. You are not an owner. You are a steward, a manager, a caretaker of something that ultimately belongs to someone else. I know what you're thinking, Steve. I own this company. I build it. I own these assets. And legally, you may be right. But here's what changes when you zoom out. Spiritually, biblically, that ownership is temporary. You're holding something, this business, these resources, these people, this platform that ultimately belongs to God. You're managing it for a season, and one day you will give an account for how you handled it. That's not depressing, it's actually freeing. Here's the frame change. An owner asks, what do I want? What maximizes my return? A steward asks, what does the owner want? How do I honor the owner's character? Different questions, different metrics, different outcomes. That frame change, that's what the stewardship lens does. It doesn't replace financial analysis, it resets your priorities so financial analysis serves something bigger. This is not just for CEOs and company owners. If you lead a department, a team, or a ministry program, you are a steward too. The budget you manage, the people you lead, the time that you allocate. None of it is ultimately yours either. Stewardship doesn't scale with the size of what you manage. It applies to every leader who carries responsibility for something that isn't theirs to keep. When you're facing a significant decision about money, people, strategy, growth, investment, direction, I would encourage you to run it through these 4 questions in this order. Question number 1, does this honor the owner? Not just, is this profitable, but would the owner, in this case, would God be pleased with this decision? Would he look at this and say, that's consistent with my character? Because here's what's deeply uncomfortable. Some of the most profitable decisions dishonor God. You can make real money in ways that violate the owner's character. You can squeeze your vendors until they have no margin. You can mislead your customers about what you're selling. You can cut corners on quality to preserve profit. You can take shortcuts that are technically legal but morally bankrupt. You can cheat and call it negotiating. You can exploit and call it efficient, and you'll profit short term. But here's the flip side. Some God-honoring decisions sacrifice short-term profit. Being honest when honesty costs you the deal. Paying vendors fairly when you could pay less. Delivering quality when cutting corners would be undetected. These decisions can hurt your quarterly numbers. They can slow your growth. They can make you less profitable than competitors with no ethical guardrails. But they honor the owner. And my personal conviction, forged over decades of doing this work, is this. When honoring God and maximizing short-term profit conflict, well, you know the answer. You honor the owner every time. That's not negotiable. Which brings us to question number 2. Does this multiply what I've been given? This comes directly from the parable of the talents in Matthew chapter 25. The owner gives servants resources and expects increase. The servants who risk, invest, and generate returns are rewarded. The servant who buries the talent, does nothing with it. That servant gets condemned, not rewarded. Condemned. Risk aversion is not faithfulness. It is not virtuous to sit on what you've been given and call it prudence. A steward isn't supposed to be a caretaker who preserves the status quo. A steward is expected to multiply, create more value, serve more people, expand the impact. If you've built something to a certain size and you're comfortable there, afraid to invest or afraid to risk, or afraid to scale, you're burying the talent. That's not faithfulness. That's fear wearing faithfulness as a costume. The question completely reframes how you think about risk. An owner asks, is this safe? A steward asks, is this wise? Safe might be doing nothing. Wise might mean calculated, intelligent risk for meaningful increase. Those are completely different questions. Question number 3. Does this care for the people involved? Your employees, your customers, your vendors, your team members, all image bearers of the owner. They matter. Not functionally, not instrumentally as resources to deploy, but they matter. I've watched leaders make brilliant financial decisions on paper that destroyed people. Laid off team members who'd given years of loyalty, squeezed vendors until they went under, made money and left damage in their wake. Lots of profit, lots of harm. That's not stewardship, that's extraction. That's using people. Stewardship says this: I can't make a decision that's numerically great for me, but genuinely harmful to the people that I'm responsible for, and call it faithful stewardship. That doesn't hold up. What does this decision mean for the families depending on those paychecks? For the vendors who've been loyal partners? For the customers who trust what I'm selling? For the volunteers who are giving their time to this mission? Stewardship includes people, not as an afterthought, as a core question. Question number 4. Does this prepare me for the accounting? Now stay with me. Matthew 25. Every steward gives an account, eventually to the owner. Imagine standing before God and explaining a decision that you made, not to your board, not to your accountant, not to your competitors, but to God. Could you look him in the eye and say, I made this decision because it was right, because it honored you, because it cared for people, because it grew what you gave me? Or would you just be explaining it away, justifying it, saying, well, everyone else does it? That hesitation, that discomfort, that's data. That's the stewardship lens working. It's your conscience saying, This might make money, but you wouldn't be comfortable standing before the owner and explaining why you made it. So maybe don't make it. Here's how the stewardship lens works in practice. Do your financial analysis. Run your numbers. Calculate your ROI. Study the market. Don't be naive. The numbers matter. But then run it through the lens. Does it honor the owner? Does it multiply what I've been given? Does it care for people? 1 or 3, if it dishonors God or genuinely harms people, you have your answer. No financial return is worth the honor cost or the people cost. If it passes all 4 questions, you have alignment. Money, character, and impact all pointing in the same direction. That's when you move with conviction instead of compromise. March 2020, our private Christian school shut down with no warning and no timeline. Many of your businesses did as well. I remember the day clearly. We went virtual overnight. Teachers in their living rooms, students on laptops, parents trying to figure out how to hold work and school together at the same time. And nobody, not us, not anyone, knew how long it was going to last. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. And very quickly, a significant financial decision landed on the table. We could cut the workforce substantially. Teachers without physical classrooms, support staff with reduced roles. The financial case was clear. If you were only running the numbers, the answer was obvious. Cut costs, preserve cash, protect the institution. That is what the spreadsheet said, and I'm not going to tell you the spreadsheet was wrong, because it wasn't. But we ran it through the stewardship lens. Question 1, does it honor the owner? These were teachers who had chosen Christian education, not because it paid the most, because it doesn't, because they believed in the mission. They had poured themselves into these students, these families, this school. Cutting them the moment things got hard, we had to ask honestly, does that honor the God we say we're building this institution for? Question 2, does this multiply what we've been given? Virtual school was new and hard and imperfect, but it was still school. These teachers were still teaching. And when we came back, because we knew we would come back, we needed these people. Their relationships with students, their knowledge of our culture, their investment in the mission. That is not something you can hire back. That walks out the door and doesn't fully return. Question 3, does it care for the people involved? These were real families depending on those paychecks. Healthcare, mortgages, kids at home during a global crisis with nowhere to go and no other job waiting. What did it mean to be a faithful steward of the people who had been faithful to us? Question number 4, could we explain this to the owner? Could we look God in the eye and say, we kept the people when it was hard. We trusted you with the margin that required. And here's where the story gets important, because this decision wasn't just about what we chose to do in this crisis. It was about what we had done before the crisis. We had margin in the bank, not by accident, because for years we had operated as faithful stewards. We hadn't spent everything that we had, optimized every dollar for growth or comfort or appearances. We had been disciplined. We had been prudent. We had built reserves, because stewardship, real stewardship, means preparing for seasons you can't see yet. That margin is what made the decision possible. Prior faithfulness created present options. We kept our staff. We communicated transparently. Here is where we are. Here is what we're doing. Here is what we're asking of you. And our people showed up. They went virtual. They learned new tools. They served students through screens in ways none of us had ever trained for. They did it because they knew the institution had stood by them. And when we came back, We came back strong. We had our full team intact, loyal, ready, and that school has continued to grow. Today, it's the largest private Christian school in our state. I cannot tell you that the stewardship lens made the season easy, because it didn't. There were hard days, hard conversations, and real financial faith that was required. But I can tell you this, we never once questioned whether we had made the right call, because we hadn't made it based on fear or financial pressure alone. We had made it through the lens, and it aligned with every one of the 4 questions. That's what the stewardship lens does. It doesn't promise the easy path. It surfaces the right one. Luke 16:10 says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. This passage is not about dollar amounts. It's about character. It's about faithfulness in how you handle whatever is in your hands. How you handle $100 reveals how you'd handle $1 million. How you treat one employee reveals how you'd treat 100. How you handle a small decision, the kind nobody is watching, reveals whether you're actually ready for a large one. It's not the size of the resource, it's the character of the steward. And here's the promise on the other side of that. Who does the owner trust with more? The person who's been faithful with what they already have. The leader who honors the owner consistently, who multiplies what's been given, who cares for the people in their charge, who makes decisions that they can stand behind. Small faithfulness opens doors. It's like a deposit in a trust account. The owner sees it and says, this person can be trusted. Small dishonesty, cutting corners, rationalizing, compromising on the things nobody's watching, closes doors. Withdrawal after withdrawal. Eventually, the balance reads 0. It's not complicated. It's not mysterious. Show me how you handle what you have, and I'll tell you what the owner will entrust to you next. This week, take one real decision that you're currently carrying, one you've been sitting with, one that doesn't feel fully settled, and run it through this stewardship lens. Get a piece of paper, write down the decision, then write the 4 questions. Does this honor the owner? Does this multiply what I've been given? Does this care for the people involved? Does this prepare me for the accounting? Write down your honest answers, all 4, not in your head, but on paper, where you have to actually look at them. Don't rationalize, don't hedge, just answer. And pay close attention to the question you most want to skip. That's usually where the decision actually lives. Here's what I've consistently found. When you actually run a decision through the stewardship lens, your gut aligns with your values. You get clarity instead of conflict. You move forward with conviction instead of second-guessing yourself. That alignment is worth more than any consultant's recommendation. The Stewardship Decision Guide is available to you. Email me at steve@savageexecutive.com, and I'll provide a 4-question decision template, space to write your answers. You can use it and keep it close for all of these types of decision. If today's episode served you, can you do me one thing? Share it with one leader who needs it. That's how this community continues to grow, one honest conversation at a time. Subscribe wherever you listen. Leave a review and if you want to go deeper, head to savageexecutive.com. I've got resources built for leaders like you. I'm Steve Smith. This is the Savage Executive. Wisdom for the weight you carry, and I'll see you next Tuesday.